Jūsų teigia, kad tikslas yra pasiekti pergalę be mūšio. Informacinės operacijos valstybėms padeda spręsti tiek taktinius, tiek operacinius, tiek strateginius klausimus. Kariniu požiūriu InfoOps yra funkcija koordinuojanti informacinius veiksmus su tikslu paveikti priešo norą, supratimą ir galimybes. Tai NATO požiūris ir mes prieš savus piliečius to nenaudojame. Rytuose šis reiškinys aiškiausiai apibūdinamas KGB vadovėliuose aprašytų ir Kremliaus iki šiol naudojamų aktyvių priemonių vardu. Rusija bei kitos valstybės informacinės operacijas naudoja tiek prieš užsienio valstybės, tiek prieš savus piliečius. Todėl yra kritiškai svarbu mokėti tai atpažinti, suprasti ir turėti tam imunitetą.
Sveiki, mėly Locked and Loaded žiūrovai, su jumis aš Aurimas Navys ir šiandien panagrinėsime labai įdomią ir delikačią temą – informacinės operacijos. Arba dar kariuomeniai žinomos kaip InfoOps. Let me introduce our guests. Today the first guest is former member of the United States Special Operation Forces, known as Green Berets, and now he's a writer, photographer, journalist, war journalist, and also these days one of the experts on the Chinese InfoOps. My pleasure to introduce you, Michael Yon. Hi, Michael.
Thank you. It's great to be here in Lithuania.
Nice to have you here. And our guest is former Lithuanian Special Operation Forces officer, security and defense expert who made a big contribution to the origins of the Lithuanian information operations, Aurimas Navys. Hi, Aurimas.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
It's always nice to have you and discussing different topics. Okay, so I will start with the question with Michael. You are known as a war journalist and you write about the Lithuanian Special Operations Forces Aitvaras in Afghanistan. Why did you choose the Chinese propaganda? And maybe what are the main findings that you find during your researches in this topic?
The Chinese information war is the most powerful in the world at this time. It's pretty incredible, actually. The more you learn about it, the more comprehensive you realize that it is. And so I've been in Asia for many years now, maybe more than 15.
Okay.
My office is in Thailand. I was kicked out of Hong Kong last year by China for covering what they're doing on the streets. I was in the fighting for 7 months.
In Hong Kong, yeah?
Yeah, in Hong Kong. Actually, I had just got a bunch of vaccinations to head back to India, actually, to cover some conflict there. And then the fighting kicked off in Hong Kong, so I shot over to Hong Kong, stayed there for 7 months, and then they finally kicked me out. But they should have kicked me out in the first week if they were really on their game. But you know, if you have a real serious information operations department, that's like having a Department of the Navy or a Department of the Air Force. It's really a powerful thing. If you've got a good ground game on information operations, you can cause countries to fall apart, fight each other, that sort of thing. For instance, one operation I've been covering since 2014 is called the Comfort Women Information Operation that China has been running. And it's about World War II sex slavery. And this information operation is designed to split Japan, Korea, and the United States, that defense triangle. Actually, there's a defense constellation that includes Philippines and Australia and whatnot. But that part of it, the center of it, would be Korea, Japan, United States. And in 2014, 15, 16, I started publishing often that this information operation has the power and will probably end up splitting apart Japan and Korea. And in 2019, it did, actually. This information operation about World War II sex slavery has caused Korea and Japan to fight each other to the point that it made it into the courts. And in 2019, there was a court decision in Korea to force huge Japanese corporations in Korea to pay reparations for World War II issues, right? So in 2020, this continued to bubble up, and now they've pretty much diplomatically split, all based on this information operation.
Maybe you have some more examples of this, for example, the slavery, the World War II.
Another one, that's the most effective one. There's others that are quite effective as well.
Because I think that the big picture or the strategic is quite big. So there is a lot of activities
one of the things that they're doing now, CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is to split Japan apart as well. And so they're focusing right now on Okinawa. I communicate with people in Okinawa every day. I deal with Japanese 7 days a week on this issue. What they're trying to do, Okinawa is sort of like the Texas of Japan, right? And so they've got their own history and that sort of thing. So what Chinese Communist Party is doing, and leftists in Okinawa, they're trying to get Japanese to speak an old dialect, which has been gone for a long time. I mean, there's farmers can speak it and whatnot. So they're putting this old language dialect on elevator buttons, on bank ATM machines. When the government starts their meetings in the morning, if it's a public meeting, they'll start with old dialect language that they haven't spoken for years. I was just in Morocco a couple of weeks ago before I came to Lithuania. And in Morocco, you'll notice there's road signs, sometimes written in 3 languages. It'll be English, Arabic, and then there's this other strange language there. And I thought, this is probably an information operation. It is. It's Berber, but Berber is actually a constellation
locals,
of... And so, but there was never a written Berber language. And so there was a big information operation to make it written, get it put on the road signs. So they, instead of using Arabic letters, they used... Like, it looks like 2 Furby computers talking with each other. It's like triangles and that sort of thing. So, but that's not the point. The point is...
So, Michael, can you please conclude that, like, with 3 main findings that you find when you start the searching of all your research about the Chinese propaganda? Main, like, okay, there is a strategic, like I heard,
The ultimate target clearly is the United States. Clearly. And... to get to the United States, taking out that defense triangle is very important, because Japan is a vital partner for the United States in the Pacific region. And so they use a divide and conquer strategy. And so they're constantly trying to get people, right now, for instance, Black Lives Matter is picking up in Japan, and there's no Black lives to defend in Japan. So I mean, it's the same tactics and strategies, and just applied locally. I see that I was just down in Colombia in South America, same thing, trying to get people to speak their own languages. I was just in Panama, same story again.
Thank you. Okay, Aurimas, so the next question. You were standing at the origins of the Lithuanian in PSYOPs, maybe, in the Stratcom. So what are the military infops? Could you please define for our viewers?
If you ask me about Russian infops, and
of course, and fighting with the Russians,
and political ones, so there is no difference. Beginning from, I think, 2008, it was academic Alexander Selivanov who just wrote a book, and it's called Informacinės противостояние, or it's in English would be counter information operations. Okay. So what he wrote, that actually Russian state, or Russia, and all Russian world has to realize that they are not living in a peacetime, but they are living in the status or in the mode of war. So
every day it's a war.
So if Russia wants to stay as it is and to defend the Russian world, then they have to build up their own capacity of information operations, primarily psychological operations, and then to implement it like a strategic or political tool or measures upon the neighbors. Actually, it's former Soviet republics,
like
and also Baltics, of course. And again, also they just said that it's not just having tools in some kind of a magazine or whatever, but you have to implement them every day, just to learn from your mistakes and to learn from the effectiveness or not effectiveness that is actually should be measured during those operations. The first one that they did is in Crimea. And I mean 2014. 2014. Actually, it started 2013. All the military, or not military, but just tourists that were coming to Crimea, what they are doing at that time, then they're just inspiring hatred to other people than Russians. So what they're saying, we're saying, that look, Ukrainian government, they're just doing a bad thing. What they're doing, they're just we're not allowing Russian people to have the language in Ukraine, especially in Crimea. Of course, it was total nonsense, but this the word has spread widely.
Fake news.
Fake news. Why? Because it was not translated just from military network, but also in Russia, in Moscow.
It's like a shaping cooperation, you know.
Exactly. In NATO language, terms, that would be shaping operations. Yeah. So we started this one, but implementing just information operations. So hatred and then fear. Fear is very, very strong emotion, and it's not just simple fear of the local people, of local Russians, but also the fear of the Russian people in Russia. They were saying that, look, it's a matter of time then Ukraine will join NATO, and then NATO with Ukraine will attack Russia. And the only...
will encircle the Russia.
Exactly.
By the...
So that was the start of the information operations. So 2008, doctrine or a book. 2013, 5 years later, all the things that were in that book were started to been implemented in Crimea's war. So there is no difference in Russia's fighting machine, civil or political information operations, or military. There is no absolutely difference. There's the same one. So because the idea that Russia as a state is always constantly in a war. It's not in a peace. It's not the peace, but the war, which is a normal state of Russia.
And I heard that they use the infops or psyops on their own people, like for in NATO or in US, we didn't. The military cannot use the psyops operations against their population. And so the next question, gentlemen, we have some differences or the between the Russian and Chinese propaganda or the information operations. What you can please maybe.
I think
what we can find.
I am not the expert on Chinese information operations, but I think what they have. China and Russia both in common. I've told about 2008 and then 2013 and 14, but now what they see that they're implementing, and actually we've talked about this with Michael, they're implementing the same principles that kind of cults have, or no, the cults of kind of religion. I'm not saying that religion is a bad thing, I'm just saying that religion is very good at brainwashing people. So China and Russia, I believe, they have the same very good skills, especially in the GRU, it's military intelligence of Russia. They have a special unit there, it's psychological operations unit of GRU. So actually I believe that they train together, maybe, not maybe directly, but obviously they have the military exercises together. They have some kind of interaction together. Because look, in 2019, I think they have in Baltic Sea, Chinese and their kind of not very big, but I just forgot. I think it was a destroyer, I guess, in the Baltic Sea. So what is the reason for China to send a military ship, a vessel, to the Baltic Sea? What's your opinion? I don't know, but I think they are learning from each other. They
have like enemies, the same enemies, like states, NATO, So maybe also is quite a common thing for them. Michael, what do you think?
And remember, they have their own NATO as well, the SCO, Shanghai Cooperative Organization. Most Americans don't even know that exists. A substantial difference between Chinese information operations and Russians is just mass. I mean, Chinese have a lot more money. Like, they can shovel gold by the ton. So they practically own Hollywood at this point. And many of our, for instance, professional basketball, they've got those guys on their knees. I wrote an article several years ago, Man in the High Castle. And in the 1930s, Nazi Germany practically owned Hollywood. Because of something, because Germany was the second biggest market for American films at that time, right? That's right. So if you wanted to really make the big bucks and be a big house in Hollywood, you needed to make the Nazis happy. So the Nazis had censors in Hollywood, as Beijing does today. The parallel is striking. But today, for instance, I mean, if you want your film to run in Beijing, you will be edited by Beijing, not just on that particular film, but comprehensively on all of your actions, everything that you and your children do. I mean, if you're the producer, if your child puts something on Twitter that they don't like, you'll hear about it. I mean, they don't play games whatsoever, and they're dominating. I mean, a lot of American actors and actresses are complete in you know, NBA and whatnot, the National Basketball Association players are just completely afraid of China.
They're in the pocket of China.
They're in the pocket, or they're afraid of it, right? Yeah, it's pretty pathetic, actually. At one point, Bruce Willis asked me about doing a movie about my life, right? And now he's going, which we didn't do, the book. But then now he's gone off to China, and he's made a movie, which amounts to an information warfare campaign movie. You know, it wasn't even a very good movie, but I mean, to boot. But I mean,
that's a good point, because we have in Lithuania also some Russian movies like Viking or others. So there's also some similarities with the actions. Maybe they have maybe some conferences by sharing the you know, the capabilities or the techniques, tactics, or.
It was an anti-Japanese movie.
Okay.
Because one thing you'll see that China is very much focused on Japan. Like, I don't think China's going to let me back in again. But I've been there about a dozen times, right? It would be the last time I went, they kicked me out of Hong Kong. But before that, I was in Beijing and Shanghai and other places. So I went to Nanjing. They have a huge museum there. It's an anti-Japan museum. I've gone to museums in many countries: Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. You know, here, just all over. Because museum warfare is a subset of information war. But you can see that you talked about before: hatred and fear. This is fundamental. Hatred has two components. It's anger plus disgust, like H2O. Hydrogen plus oxygen equals steam, right? When you cook them off together. It's the same with anger and disgust. You'll get hatred. And if you mix hatred with fear, your people will be willing to go to war. Absolutely. And you can see a very deep and comprehensive ground game against Japan. I keep warning Japanese that they are creating hundreds of millions of Chinese who hate Japanese. This is a serious thing. Because when you're watching information war, that's a presage to what they're planning to do with something else in the future, right? Like,
there's definitely some similarity. When you're talking, I heard some similarities with the Nazis, with the German Nazis during the World War II.
Absolutely.
Before the
Absolutely, because you've got to. Most people are not willing to go kill somebody. Most of us are not willing to do that. In fact, we'll defend people that we like, right? And so at least. Won't attack people we like at a minimum, right? And so you have to create that hatred and that fear
in the people.
And so you see museums, for instance, that are just really throwing acid on the Japanese character, trying to make the Chinese and the Koreans hate them.
Okay, thank you. So do the Western countries or the NATO, the US, do they conduct the propaganda or the psyops? What is the differences like between the Western countries and the Chinese and Russia?
Sure, I mean, definitely we do. I wish we did a better game at it, actually. I mean, because if your information ground game is better, then you won't have to use your Navy as much, right?
Correct.
I mean, at least we need to counter their operations at a minimum. Just countering their operations would be enough to at least hopefully keep the peace. But at this stage, especially with the Chinese Communist Party being so good and so comprehensive and so well funded in their information operations, I don't see how, for instance, Japan is going to get out of a war.
Okay.
Which means us. Okay, which means you.
Thank you.
And to add to that is, I think, unfortunately, NATO is losing that game. Because if you look to the target that NATO defines, it is Russian military maybe, and that's it. And if you want to target, to counter propaganda, first of all, you have to build a narrative in your own country, in your own countries and states, to build a narrative how strong you are, whatnot, and then to target local population of Russia. You want to have those people do not want fighting with you. Because as long as you want Russian people to fight, It's just, that means you are losing.
Aurimas, what we can say about the Russian actions in the Baltics or in Lithuania mainly? Maybe there is some things that, for example, the local or the Lithuanians don't see because they don't have a background of PSAPs or they...
The thing is that it's my personal view, and I think Russia, or Kremlin, they just dropped that idea to, as Mr. Selivanov in his book said, that to conquer the Baltic states without entering with soldiers or with infantry foot, by just conquering hearts and minds of Baltic populations, nations. So I think now what they have in their mind, they're just using the same strategy as we use in all other countries of NATO or European Union. They're just dividing the society. They are just looking for breaking points where people are very sensitive about. Like in Lithuania, we're all talking about our war after war, the partisans, freedom fighters, and Russia, of course, they're getting in here an idea that all of our partisans were Jew killers or Nazis. So it's like, and there are many discussions going on now in the society, and what we have actually just with one or two things dropped into public, and to discussing about that, what you have a society which is polarized. The same is with migrants. Migrant crisis today, it's just one idea after another comes from Russia. Look, all migrants are bad people. All migrants, just kill you or rape your woman and blah blah blah. It's stupid. Of course, I can't say that it's. There are maybe some of them which it's normal. Also, we have to defend our country. Also, we have to think about how to build a fence in the minds of the migrants. But it just doesn't mean that they came here to rape our women and steal our money from our houses. But what we have now here in society, it's a discussions going on. And the polarized society, one of this family march, how to call it in English, Šeimų marches. It's kind of the extremist group now here in Lithuania. And I'm sure they are financed by Russia. Because what they are doing, they are just putting gasoline into the fire, more and more and more. We had that event in Kazlų Rūda. Not Rūda. Koks poligonas was the... Rūdininkų base. Yeah. So now we are just several people that are blocking the way and not letting the policemen do their job. They are not letting the migrants to be settled there. And what you have, just 8 people on the street. And all the discussions in our society. Politicians are discussing about that. All, the publications or our portals. So what happened actually, just few people blocked the way and the police just removed them. That's it. But in the information sphere, it's just crisis happened just in Lithuania. Not just migrant crisis, but it's just a big part of a nation actually is not happy about that, right? So it's a simple thing how Russia is working here in Baltic states, and I believe in other countries.
Can I mention something about?
Sure,
you
Michael.
mentioned something very important.
Sure.
As a war photographer who spent years in wars and many other years in major protests and minor ones around the world, like I got kicked out of Hong Kong last year after 7 months. One thing that I've noticed is that 8 people you said at that protest, right? Now, I'll guarantee you it's important that our people be vaccinated against information war, right? So I'm going to give you a vaccination right now against information war. When you see photography or videography and it's very tight on the people, or they're just burning something, because cameras always go to fire, right? So it'll be, they burn a flag or something, a piece of paper. You can burn a candle and the cameras will go to it. If it's a tight shot, it's a small protest. If it's a big protest, it's always a wide shot. So anytime you see a tight shot, it's just a few guys. Keep that in mind. Don't forget it and remind your friends of that. That's very important because it's the truth. And everybody who's watching this will end up in protest sooner or later, and they'll be like, and then they'll see it on the news and they'll go, yep, that's true. So that's going to be tight shots on television yesterday, wasn't it?
I agree, absolutely. That's the thing how they have done. I mean, that's the kitchen of the information operations. That's very easy to do that. pull up emotion just for normal people like you and me and other who are watching the television. How can you do that? Like Michael said, some flag is burning and 2 or 3 people shouting. It's an emotion, and you have emotion, and then you have all the things that information operations planner. When did you do that?
Name the main differences of comparing the China and the Russia, because we talk that they have some similarities, they have some enemies, both the same. And what is the differences? So one is different that, Michael, you said already, that it's the China has big money, the Communist Party have a lot of resources, the people, the money, the strategic, yeah. But what other differences we can find? Maybe in Asia, didn't they, for example, in Siberia, the Russian owned Siberia. Did China do something there or not?
Actually, let's talk specifics that I'm sure you have here in Vilnius, Confucius Institutes. Mm-hmm. Confucius Institutes are just an extension of MSS, which is Ministry of State Security, which is basically Chinese Communist Party, KGB, right? Mm-hmm. So Confucius Institutes, if you have one in Vilnius, which you do, that will be a spy factory. And so you'll have students that will be offered, listen to what I'm saying, you'll have students who will be offered scholarships to go study in China. They will try to recruit those students as spies. And then they will get older and they will become members of the government. They do this constantly. I started attacking Confucius Institutes in 2014, trying to get those out of the United States with some limited success until our recent election. They're very important to watch Confucius Institutes and other Chinese Communist Party operations, which are in your face. What they will do is Confucius Institutes, they will come in and they'll offer some amount of money, like say 100,000 or 150,000 euros, let's say US dollars in America. They'll offer, say, 2 free teachers for the university and a Mandarin course and a Chinese history course. And what they're there to do is find recruits. And they're very good at it. And they'll change the curriculum in your school. You'll have your university students start hearing about the Comfort Women Issues campaign. That's one of the things that Confucius Institutes do. They come and they start insinuating anti-Japanese propaganda because they also need to prep the wider battlefield, not just their own people to fight Japan eventually, but they need to have the greater world say, well, it's okay, you know, Japan's an evil country and China is just defending her rights, right? But that's not what it's all about. It's an information campaign, massive.
Okay. And the Russians, they do the same things in Lithuania.
Absolutely, they do the same thing, but they do just, I would say it's kind of on the small scale. It's rather our businessmen and our people which are coming to Russia, and they are trying to do the same thing as China is trying to do with our young people, with students. Of course, we have some students there in Russia, but here's the difference, I think. We have that over periods of 30 years, and because of the history of Lithuania, many people here in Lithuania have, Lithuanians or other people, but in Lithuania, they have this very live idea of Russia is being enemy. So everyone is very cautious when they are going to Russia, and they know that they could become potentially the targets of Russian intelligence or Russian propaganda or Russian brainwashing there. So I think then our people going to China, they don't think about China as an adversary, let's say. And even if we would agree with Chinese intelligence or with Chinese state offerings or suggestions to do something for China here in Lithuania, but not harming Lithuania. So they probably will do because it's China. We have nothing to fear about this. China is far away. They are bringing money here. Like I just recently talked with one guy, he is businessman, and he runs a company, and he says, so it's very good if Chinese will come here. Actually, they came already. But if they come here and they will have even all our harbor, Klaipėda harbor, they would invest money in there. And they say, no, it's not good.
Yeah, they'll pull you in a debt trap. They do debt traps all over the world.
Yep.
The debt traps are very serious. You shouldn't let them. A debt trap is where For instance, with Maldives or Cambodia, long list, Djibouti, they'll come in and do what you just said. Hey, we'll invest in your harbor, but you know we have to have some collateral. It'll end up being the harbor, right? They'll pay off local officials. They will pay off journalists to get favorable media, that sort of thing. They'll plant stories, that sort of thing. And they'll end up eventually owning your harbor. They'll end up owning your television stations, and they'll do it very subtly. They won't do it necessarily directly. They usually don't do it directly. It's very indirect, and you have to be highly cautious because they'll do it so slowly. It's the frog in the water, right?
The things that they concur between, like China and Russia, they have some not the differences, but that they compare with each other. Do you see some things like concurring between?
Oh yeah, divide and conquer as an example. I mean, that's what we learned in Special Forces also, divide and conquer, but we're learning from them actually. But when it comes to magnitude, that can't be understated. Russia is like a bottle rocket compared to Chinese information operations like a Saturn V moon rocket. I mean, it's a really serious program. It's super comprehensive. It's massive. I can't understate how massive it is. When journalists send me a Wikipedia link, I want to tell them I'm going to shoot a cruise missile back at you. You know, Wikipedia is information warfare high ground, right? They plant stories, for instance, in media or on blogs or whatnot, so that they can be cited in Wikipedia, or Wikipedia as you call it, I believe. And then journalists who shouldn't be looking at it are constantly sending me Wikipedia links, right? And they should know that that's like the pump panel where you get the cholera water from, right? You know, interesting about that, you know, when you get cholera, the disease, the bacteriological disease from water, right? You die from dehydration, right? And so naturally you start drinking more water, right? From the same pump usually, and you die really quickly. It's the same with information. When you have a source that's polluted, people immediately are like, I'm going to go find some more water, some more information. But many of the sources are polluted. You don't know where to get clean information. And they will make an information game so comprehensive that you can't find the zipper. It's in the libraries, it's in the movies, it's in the bookstores, many books about the same topics, musicals, and it's all in the newspapers, Wikipedia. So you're in this ecosystem of information warfare that is so comprehensive that for you to stand out and say, hey, the emperor has no clothes, they're going to, you know, like Chinese constantly attack me for pointing out that they have no clothes.
So Michael, can we find some antidotes for that? This big machine of the Chinese propaganda? We have some in the Western world. We have some tools or something, some measures to beat this, to fight back.
First, the vaccine.
Okay.
Realize, and the more people that realize that you are always in information ecosystems, whether here in particular it's Russian heavy influence because of proximity, right? But you're also within the sphere, the gravitational pull of Chinese Communist Party, very much so. I mean, this is, you know, but one thing that you need to be cognizant of is that it is the game is so comprehensive that, for instance, sharing Wikipedia articles about anything political, you can bet your enemies are seeding their information. And when I say seed, I mean planting seeds, not seeding with a C, but seeding with an S. You know, that they are planting their information operations within places that they know will be shared widely.
And some other tools? Do we have something? Vaccine, that's good.
Yeah, just constantly be aware that, for instance, communism is a cult, right? I've studied cults extensively because communism is a cult.
We have a Soviet communism.
Yeah, and one thing about cults, the one cult you will never see is the cult that you're in, right? You can see everybody else's cult. You can be like, hey, that guy's in a cult that's pretty silly. You know, he's wearing silly hats and stuff. But you'll never see the one that you're in. And one of the things that they will use well, communism, they'll try to, that's a whole topic in and of itself. We could talk for hours on that. I'll let it stop there, but just be cognizant that recruitment is an ongoing process, 24/7.
Okay. And what about the Russians? Do we have some tools or?
Absolutely. If we talk about Lithuania and our population, our nation, so first of all, you have to understand, and I think also China do this, but not at such an extent. Russia, every hour, every day, they're trying to, Kremlin tries to rewrite our history. They're always repeating that. We never have, we've never been a kingdom first, right? Then we've never have our own sovereign dukes and kings. Then we are just very close to Russia's traditions. We have the same religion, we have the same culture, we have the same ballets, we have the same sports teams, we have all the same. And then you think that, okay, maybe, and actually 30, 40 years ago in Europe, in West Europe, that was actually the image of Lithuania, of three Baltic states, is just a part of Russia, right? Even in the States, it was just kind of strange Russians that they pretend they are not Russians. That's exactly what Russia was doing and doing is now. So they're trying to rebuild our narrative and our history. First thing, we have to fill in that gap. We just do not have this luxury to allow our enemy to build narrative for us. We have to build our narrative for our own state, but we are not doing this. So the first remedy, as Michael said, is to understand that you are always under constant bombardment of information operations. The next one, that you have to know your history and to know what your identity. Without identity, it's very easy to be conquered by information operations made by Russians or by Chinese or whatever, whatnot. And the third thing, always, as they say, so you have a narrative. The third thing, you have to build your own information operations and to launch these operations on your enemy. You can't just leave your enemy. No, it's the same military tactics. You just can't allow your enemy to do what he wants. So you have to keep him busy. So when you have your own information operations on PSYOPs, so he is busy of doing things and counter fighting those operations. So three things. It's the three quite simple things, but still we are now, and it's a long way for us to realize. I mean, for us, it's for not just for Lithuanians, not just for Lithuania, but for all NATO. I think I could dare to say that, because now we're just talking about defensive operations, defensive cyber operations, because believe me, you know that information operations is also cyber operations. That's a huge part of it that we're not covering here, but it is. And all the defacements that are going on the portals, all the Facebook things, all fake profiles and all those things. They are not just some kind of bad people writing bad things. They're just deliberately done and implanted into our, because it's Facebook. It's a machine. It's a marketing machine, but you can also do it or apply it to the information operations, because in a sense, commercials targeting you as a victim of the one who will be spending money. Just states like China and Russia, we are targeting you not to spend money, but to conquer your mind and heart, to just support the Russian regime or just do what they want.
But gentlemen, still, is it possible to respond to the big state-run infops, all the information operations? Because, like Aurimas, like you mentioned, the measures like from the cyber to the direct actions on the ground and all those things, only by means of communications, or it is possible. You see, of course, maybe the whole NATO should work like shoulder to shoulder.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Offensively.
Offensively.
Because that's very important. Yeah, to make them invest a lot in their defensive game instead of us just playing. We need a defensive game, of course. We need the vaccine, but we also need to play super offense. And they have a lot of vulnerabilities as well. China has many ethnic groups, and we can play the same game with them that they play with us. But we don't play hard enough.
But it's not democratic. It's not the liberty and the free. Everybody's.
It's war. It's straight up war. We're at war.
We need to understand that. The politics should understand this.
Yeah. Oh, I think they do, but
not everybody, I think.
But I mean, in a general sense,
okay,
in Western Europe, they do understand. Let's just take the Nord Stream 2. But even the president of the States just made an agreement with Russia and with Germany, and no, it's always the world is balancing, you know, on a political power and on the and money and on the discontent of the people they I'm not rule, but kind of, you know, govern, let's say. So it's always the game of this. And, you know, if simple thing, if I want to be re-elected, I have to think about this, that, and this. Hmm?
Yeah. Michael, you have something to add to this?
Information war, the weaponization of migrants, these things are overlapping a great deal right now. For instance, this year I was in Washington, D.C. I was at the Capitol attack, by the way. I didn't go inside, but I was physically there. And then I spent a couple of days with the president's attorney, briefing him, Giuliani, this year. Then I went to the inauguration and then flew straight to the Texas border. And as soon as Biden was elected, the very next day, they started flooding across the border. The very next day. And now, so then I flew down to Colombia, South America, and was watching the flows that go into Panama and up through Central America, through Mexico. Spent several months there. I just took 2 congressmen down into the Darien Gap, which is the jungle, 2 American congressmen. And then I flew over to Greece and Bulgaria and Morocco and came here studying the information and migration weaponization. These things go together. I mean, flooding the United States with migrants right now is even worse than Europe right now, which is pretty tough. And these things are the things that can end up, let's face it, I've been all over the world. I've been to more than 80 countries. I've spent more than half of my life outside of the United States, more than half of my life in other countries, right? A lot of those third world, India, Nepal, Iraq, Afghanistan, more than 80, right? And I've learned one thing. Some fish just don't mix well in the same aquarium, right? And, you know, fish tank charts, some of them just shouldn't be here. They're going to fight. They're going to do bad things. We have conflicts with some cultures. That's just the bottom line. Now, some people will say you're this or you're that because you said that. And, you know, you're xenophobic. I'm like, well, for a xenophobe, I sure spend a lot of time. Sometimes I go 2 or 3 weeks and the only white person I see is me when I'm shaving, when I shave, right? And so, no, it's not that at all. It's just a realization that if you open your doors to the wrong kind of people, you're going to end up in a war. They'll end up in charge of your government. They'll end up, you know, you'll just be overwhelmed. I mean, Lithuania needs to stand up for itself. Poland, I'm really happy that some countries like Lithuania and Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, of course, have all stood up for themselves. But, you know, there's a lot of pressures to cave. Don't cave. Don't do it. This is life and death stuff. All the enemies on the table will use the migration issue to erode your country.
Okay, but still, where's the line between the deterrence and the dog and pony show, or the pokazucha, like the Russians say that? So how to find the line between those? Like you can talk a lot of, but it's not in the, like, maybe the words should go with the works, like together.
You mean on migration issues?
No, on migration and all in all in this information operations.
For starters, known information operations like Confucius Institute, shut them down. They should not be in Lithuania. That is a recruitment tool for the Ministry of State Security. That is the Chinese KGB. You got it right here in Vilnius. They're here to recruit Lithuanians. I will guarantee you, I don't even have to go to the physics and engineering departments of your universities. I know they'll be filled with Chinese. They're not here just to study physics and engineering. They're here to take your laser technology and to take it back to China. And then your patents,
To steal.
exactly, your patents won't matter, right? They don't pay attention to patents. They don't pay attention to American patents, Japanese, nobody's patents. Intellectual property means nothing to the Chinese Communist Party, and they've got the the industrial capacity to actually do something. Now, Russia can steal your technology, but they don't have the base to just overwhelm you, right? China does. China's got the ability to steal your laser technology and put you right out of business. So your scientists who worked very hard to develop something that's very important, it'll just be stolen. And what are you going to do about it?
Okay. Michael, please give a list of the work to do for our government.
Starters, shut down the Confucius Institute, out the door. China will hem and haw about it. They'll cry bloody murder. First, investigate so that you can see whether or not I'm telling the truth. After you've investigated, then kick them out, right? Because you're going to find that I'm telling the truth. Have your computers at the Vilnius University been broken into, for instance? Has that happened?
No.
I think many
yes.
times. I'm not sure about the university, but
by
yes.
China. I mean, these are things that
nobody hear about it.
Yeah, so. They have. So I mean, so the bottom line is identify. A lot of these information operations are in your face, right? For instance, I went to a museum in Penang, Malaysia, right? Because I was going to museums all over Asia and Europe and whatnot, and checking out the way that museums are used for information operations, right? So what they'll do is they'll set up a museum, and then, for instance, in Korea, there's quite a few that do this, and then they'll get a bunch of journalists, and they'll pay for they'll get a whole flight of journalists. They'll fly them into some place like Jeju Island off of South Korea. They'll fly a bunch of journalists from Seoul, and there'll be a bunch of Western journalists and others, and they'll take them on what I call the magic carpet ride. They take them around to all these things. It's got their messages, and then boom, all the messages hit the wires. Of course, it goes to Wikipedia, you know. And so these cheap investments in these museums and doing these junket tours with journalists end up getting huge returns on global information media wars. They set up statues all over the place. For instance, comfort women, sex slave statues just went in Berlin. They put them all over the United States. They're all over Korea. They put them in Hong Kong, Taiwan. They just put one in Taiwan. Little things that get big media, and watch for those things, and don't let them be put into Lithuania, because then they'll use you as a battleground.
Yeah, that's pity that in Lithuania we react to the Russians more than to the Chinese. Some actions in here in Lithuania.
I think it's not a pity, it's just a reality. We don't see China as a potential adversary, as an enemy. We see Russia as an immediate enemy that is actually threatening our world, our state, our people.
We have historical experience with the Russians.
But with China, they are so, it seems for us, it's so far away, some far away country. But yeah, that's the reality. They're doing just not as Russians do, but in a soft way. But as we talked already, it's a soft way actually. It's a really, really slow and very soft way, but it's nevertheless even maybe more dangerous than the Russian propaganda, because we know that Russian propaganda is here, that Russian information operations is here, and we just used to the way how Kremlin does that, and we used to somehow, especially now, we have many different programs that are financed by government, financed by NGOs, how to distinguish reality from the fake news, how to look into information and see if it's true or not. But then it comes from China, and then it comes in the form of not the direct communication, direct information. We just tend to just dismiss that. And as we mentioned already, the project with our harbor, the project with a logistic terminal that they want to build up here for their goods, like they have in Netherlands, you know. And what they're doing, or in Poland, actually they bring their own goods, then they make how we call that, etiquettes, the labels of European Union,
right?
And they put on their goods European Union, and then dispatch of the whole Europe as a European Union goods, and that means we don't pay taxes. And that means they are stealing from us again. Okay, but it's a kind of soft way. They are not threatening. China is not threatening us directly. That's
yet.
Yet.
Yeah. Once they've buried in like a tick on a dog, then they will. Once they have enough influence, then they'll start playing hardball games. Then they'll start canceling people. They'll start like getting your show canceled for having somebody like me on, as an example, which is actually a danger. It is actually literally a danger for you to have me on. So you'll air it or you won't. But I mean, you know, again, they did kick me out of Hong Kong last year. You can see it in Time Magazine and whatnot. But China does play the long game, for instance, with Taiwan. Thousands of Taiwanese companies are now situated on the mainland China. I mean, they're sharing blood flow. I mean, a lot of blood flow, not a few capillaries. So there's no way for them to there's no way for Taiwan to go, oh, you know, we're just going to be Taiwan. How are you going to do it? Likewise with Hong Kong. Hong Kong, well, they didn't have many advantages at all except for their relationship, especially with the United States, as an ATM, basically as a bank machine. That's a way that China could convert currency. But insofar as natural resources, Hong Kong doesn't have enough food, they don't have enough water, they don't even have electricity, right? So, I mean, they're just dead in the water. In any case, beware of China. They're the silent enemy. Yeah, they're here.
Maybe you know who is actually stand under those InfoOps operations in the China, Michael, and in the Russia, Aurimas? Yeah. Organizations or NGOs or some names. We need some names.
Okay, Ignatius Ding, right? Ignatius Ding he's a Chinese man who lives in Cupertino, California. He runs the Comfort Women in Nanjing, Rape of Nanjing operations and other information operations in the United States. One of my research partners, Al Johnson, he's the one who identified the spy on Senator Feinstein's staff. His name is Russell. Russell was Russell Lowe. He is a Chinese man. He was Feinstein's driver for years. Senator Feinstein's one of the most powerful senators in the United States. Russell Lowe, the Chinese man, was going to meetings for Senator Feinstein at, for instance, the Chinese embassy. After he was found out as being a spy, he then left Senator Feinstein's office, which is, 2 years ago now? And now he runs Comfort Women operations in the United States, right? So that means he's the #2 man for Ignatius Ding. Ignatius Ding, he is the one who recruited Iris Chang. Iris Chang is the so-called author of the book, The Rape of Nanjing. They recruited her. She's actually American. Her father was a mainland Chinese physicist, and her mother was a molecular biologist. They met in Taiwan. They married, moved to America. Iris Chang was born. She was recruited by Ignatius Ding, who is Russell Lowe's friend, who was Senator Feinstein. So this stuff is not actually hidden if you look for it. You know, for instance, the people that are running Confucius Institute here in Vilnius, I'll guarantee you, a lot of this is right in your face. I went to Penang.
It's like a network, you know, like a big network.
Oh yeah, and a lot of it will be right in your face because nobody's calling them out on it. I went to Penang. I went to the museum there, the War Museum, Anti-Japanese Museum, and I talked with the curator, and he was very proud of his museum. And he said, "Oh, I just got back from China." So I said, "Oh, really? You just got back from China?" He didn't know I was in his museum because of that, right? Because what they do is they both put in museums and they just kind of hijack museums, and they get everybody on the same sheet of music. So he said, yeah, his name, I've forgotten his name, but anyway, he said, yeah, I just got back from China. In fact, here's this book. And he puts it on the desk. You know, he's the curator, right? And so he's showing me the book. He's like, here's me in this photo. I'm like, oh, can I photograph this? Which I did. And so it's got all the curators from around the world, from especially Holocaust museums. And then he's flipping the pages, and I'm photographing every page, and it's got all their names and everything. Of course, we checked out every name. One of the names is a lady named Nancy Li, L-I. She's Chinese in Houston, Texas. She works with the Holocaust Museum in Houston, Texas, right? You got a Holocaust Museum here. They always try to latch on to that. They'll always try to associate the Rape of Nanjing, the Holocaust of Asia, they call it, and the Comfort Women issue with Holocaust. So you'll see they'll take Holocaust, which really occurred in a big way, and then they'll latch on their information operations to cause people to hate Japan. And again, Japan is not their end target. Clearly their end target is the United States. Once they can take out, they've already taken out the Japan, Korea, relationship, it's really more than it's on the ground, right? And now they're working on Japan, United States. It's not working yet, but they keep working on it, and they're working on internal relations within Japan. For instance, trying to get Okinawa to split off from mainland Japan. And so, yeah, who? Names? Ignatius Ding and Russell Lowe in the United States. They're running the operations there. And here, I don't know who they are here, but I'll guarantee you I could find them in a week. They're not going to be hidden. They're going to be laying right on. They're going to be like right on the surface.
Okay, thank you.
Just the one thought about what Michael said, that the Holocaust, it's all the same thing. Here, Holocaust is used to, as Michael said, to build up a breaking point in our society, saying that, like information operations, that all our freedom fighters were actually perpetrators of Holocaust. So it's not true, but that's just to reflect on that. And in Asia and here, Russia uses the same Holocaust, just different Holocaust, but the idea of Holocaust. Now about Russia, philosophically, behind the information operations of Russia stand power and money. It's always like this. It's always been like this, and it's always will, and it will be, and it is. And it's oligarchs who strategically think or thought. It's oligarchs who run the Kremlin, not Putin. Putin is just a, a doll, maybe I could say. But all those oligarchs who have Russia in their hands. So they want money, they want power. Now the brains are PSYOP unit in military intelligence of Russian military forces. So it is run, it is operated from there, and then they have many instruments like Russia Today, ORT, Sputnik here, Sputnik News, portals, even translated into Latvian, Lithuanian, and Estonian, because they just realized that in Russian, nobody knows Russian anymore here, like young people. We also have NGOs here like Prafondru. It's actually the NGO who is in charge here in Baltic states of taking care of Russian compatriots, let's say. And then it's Rosotrudnichestvo. It's again NGO which is responsible for boosting up Russian culture, publishing Russian books, but that's in theory. In reality, all those instruments are used to channel propaganda to people's minds. And then at the end, there stand just simple extremists or some kind of, not very clever people or stupid people. And I'm saying not about stupid people, what I have in mind is not just their capacity to think or decide, but I'm having, then saying stupid is in the terms of Mark Cipolla, the Italian professor, who said that stupid people are those who are, hurting or harming themselves and harming the society. So that's the lowest point where, those ideas are transforming into the violent things, into the material things, like blocking roads, like installing riots, like banning things on the streets, or just even beating up the people on the street.
That we have with the migrants.
Like we have with the migrants. Right. So up there, money and power, oligarchs, then the brains, like military intelligence with psychological operations unit. Actually, it was like, in 2008, we knew that it was like 100 men and women. Now it's of course, it's just, you can Google that. It's over 1,000. So it's 10 times bigger. Now, brains, the people, the specialists, psychologists, military thinkers, who just, their job is to sit there, not to sit, but to analyze and to make, plan and launch those operations. And then instruments, just to repeat, NGOs, big information channels like RT, Russia Today, RT, Sputnik, and then those people who are just perpetrators on the street, who are just
or in the Facebook, for example.
Or in the Facebook, yeah. But always, see, information operation at least what Russia does. Information operations at the end will always have a material thing. It's not just an operation. Like jet fighters flying over UK flagship in the Black Sea, right? Like there are tanks and the military exercises going on just in the Kaliningrad, just right next to our border. So they always will use a brute force and mechanical force, just to support the information operations. Let's say it's not just standalone operation, like communication or images. It's always should be backed by something, and by something I mean it's the reality on the ground. Nord Stream to gas pipeline. Again, it's again information operation. Nuclear power plant in Ostravets, that our neighbor Belarus built. In fact, it's not Belarus, a Belarusian one. The $10 billion US were put into that nuclear plant by Rosatom, which is Russian state-owned company. So it's Russian money. Oligarchs put that money into that power plant. It's not just simple power plant, because if they say that it blowed. Something went wrong, and they just put that into all the news channels. Just imagine what happened here in Vilnius. Okay, people usually they don't check up the information. They will react immediately because something went wrong in 30 kilometers from Vilnius in nuclear plant. So.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I think that we have a very good discussion and very good facts. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Aurimas.
Thank
See you.
Thank
See you next
for
time.
having us here.